Welcome into CBS Sports HQ. This is your mock draft show, taking a look at Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft, 1 through 10. We have some interesting things going on here. The Jets pick at number 2. I will tell you there will be a trade there also for the Eagles at 6. So let's get underway. Let's welcome in a guy who is our 1 seed at CBS Sports HQ, senior NFL writer Pete Prisco, also draft expert Ryan Wilson. You're a 1 seed as well, Ryan. Obviously, that's why we have you guys both on the show. We are going to go through Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft. A lot of good things going on here. Let's start with Trevor Lawrence. Of course, he's going 1 overall. Ryan, I want to start with you, though, because a couple weeks ago, he had the longest odds in William Hill history of a potential first-round pick at minus 4,000. It has since gone to minus 6,000. Why is it still going up? It's just incredible.
Well, Urban Meyer was front and center in Trevor Lawrence's pro day a month or so ago before Trevor Lawrence had that surgery. Trey Lance had his pro day a few weeks ago. Urban Meyer was nowhere to be seen. He was at the facility handling Jaguars business. He didn't care about being there because he knew, just like we know, that Trevor Lawrence is going to be the first overall pick. I think that's a done deal. I don't know if Trevor Lawrence has gotten his hands on a playbook yet. I don't know if that's legal or not. If he doesn't have one, he should get his hands on one because who are we kidding at this point? The draft, as you pointed out earlier today, Amanda, is 37 days away, I believe, so he might as well get to work. That's what's going to happen. You could argue about what happened in free agency so far, whether the Jaguars should have been more aggressive, but they're going to get Trevor Lawrence. They're going to have all those draft picks to build around him, and there's no excuse, and Prisco says this all the time, that this team shouldn't be competitive in 2 years from now.
All right, let's go to the Panthers at 2 here. Trade alert. I meant to say that first. I need like a little siren or something. Because Ryan Wilson does have in his latest mock draft the Panthers trading up to 2, getting the Jets pick, handing the Jets $973 and a 2021 first rounder. The Jets, Pete Prisco, select Justin Fields. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that's a pretty hefty price to pay to go up, but if you have a conviction about Justin Fields, I understand it. And I do think he's the second quarterback in this draft. I know there's a lot of people that think Zach Wilson is the guy, but I think if the Panthers go make the move to get a quarterback, I think Justin Fields would make a lot of sense. I also think they could stay there if you're the Jets and draft Zach Wilson, but in this scenario, I could see the Panthers making a move up to get one of the quarterbacks that they really like. So I understand it. I just think that's a hefty price to pay to move up those spots.
Yeah, Pete, it is a lot, and that's exactly right. But I do wonder, given how aggressive David Tepper, the owner, has sounded about him wanting to make this football team better as soon as possible. If they fall in love, and you're right, we don't know which quarterback they love. We know Trevor Lawrence is going 1, and that's it. But if they love Justin Fields and they feel like he's not going to be there at 8, I would imagine that David Tepper might give the green light on giving up what they have to give up to get him. If you're getting Cam Newton 2.0, and I said this earlier, I think he's actually better than Cam Newton is as a thrower when they're at this stage of their careers for both of them. And if you're getting that, you probably feel okay about departing ways with that first-round pick next year. The issue, of course, becomes you don't want to be the Houston Texans and give a first-round pick and then that end up being the number 3 pick overall. You have to win some football games next year, win 8 or 9 football games, and that could be a large ask for someone like Justin Fields, who probably needs a month or so on the bench. But again, if you're a top 10 pick, the expectation as a quarterback is that you play sooner rather than later.
Let's go to the Dolphins at 3. Of course, the Dolphins have 2 picks in the first round. And Ryan, you have them taking Ja'Marr Chase out of LSU. Of course, he opted out this season. And Ryan, on your article, you say this actually has to do, this pick right here, with Tua's status. Explain.
Yeah, Tua's going to be there. He appears to be the guy. We've heard Chris Greer say, the GM, that Tua's going to be their guy when there were conversations earlier in the offseason about whether they would draft a quarterback at number 3 or maybe package their picks and try to get one of these quarterbacks that we're going to talk about. It sounds like they're going to stick with him. Ryan Fitzpatrick, who has since signed with football team, had nothing but good things to say about Tua Tagovailoa. So if he's the guy, get him some weapons. And Ja'Marr Chase is the best wide receiver in this draft class. You could argue whether he's going to be the best pure pass catcher. We'll talk about that too. But Ja'Marr Chase opted out. It did not matter. He is an absolute playmaker. He's not a guy that's going to run a 4.35. At least I don't think he is. But he always finds ways to get open. He's incredibly aggressive as a contested catch player, and he's much stronger than everyone else he goes up against. So that will translate very well to the next level. And Tua needs playmakers, and it feels like Ja'Marr Chase is a good one. Is it too high for a wide receiver? That's a conversation worth having, but Ja'Marr Chase feels special to me.
Next, we move on to the 4th overall pick. That is the Falcons. Ryan does not have taking a quarterback, which he has had them do in the past, rather going with Florida tight end Kyle Pitts, who just ran a blistering 4.46 40. Pete Prisco, what do you think about Kyle Pitts to the Falcons?
Yeah, normally I would say, okay, too high for a tight end, but this guy's a little bit different. I mean, this is a weapon. He can split out. He looks like a wide receiver. He runs like a wide receiver. So I would understand this. And remember, Arthur Smith loves to use a lot of double tight end sets, and that means that you'll have Hayden Hurst and Kyle Pitts on the field. I still think there's a possibility they could go quarterback, but if you're going to be sitting there and you have this guy staring you in the face, I see the attractiveness of it, and I think he's going to be a mismatched nightmare for defenses. I would love this for the Atlanta Falcons, and particularly since they'll be keeping Matt Ryan as their quarterback for the next couple of years.
And Pete's right. It all comes down to what are they going to do with the quarterback. They have the new GM and the new coach. Do they want to stick with Matt Ryan for another year, another 2 years? If they do, Kyle Pitts makes a lot of sense. You could also draft an offensive lineman here because we've seen Matt Ryan run for his life the last few years, and that's been part of the issue. The defense isn't very good, but they have salary cap issues, so they haven't been able to address a bunch of those needs in the free agency period either. But Kyle Pitts sort of feels like a layup. Like, you know, there's a lot of projection on these guys, especially quarterbacks. Kyle Pitts feels like a guy that what you see is what you're going to get to the next level. And if you're that comfortable with him, I don't care what position you say he plays. All he does is make plays down the field. And you know, as we said here, Amanda, Matt Ryan would certainly be very happy to have a player like that to go along with Hayden Hurst, who only has one more year left on his deal.
Just a fantastic weapon there. Let's move on to the Bengals with the 5th overall pick. Cincinnati did address a bunch of defensive needs in free agency. So, Ryan, where are they now turning at 5?
I haven't taken Jamar Chase, and that went over not great on Twitter. Bengals fans want Penei Sewell at number 5. When my mock draft came out on Monday, I had a scout text me Monday morning and said they're taking Penei Sewell. They ain't taking a wide receiver. They have Riley Reif, who they signed in free agency, which is great news. They have Jonah Williams, their left tackle, former first-round pick, who was taken 2 years ago. But the thinking is Jonah Williams has 33-inch arms, and that's short arms by offensive tackle standards in the NFL. Kick him inside. You can take Penei Sewell, and then you have Riley Reif on the other side if that's the direction you want to go. I was okay this time having them take Jaylen Waddle because he is so explosive down the field. One more weapon for Joe Burrow. There will be times later early in the second round you can get more offensive line help. But if you love Penei Sewell more than Jaylen Waddle, by all means take him here, and I don't think anyone cares about it.
I mean, if they get 1 and 1A, if they get Jamar Chase and Jaylen Waddle with this pick, they got a bonanza. You had them taking both guys. I love it. No, I'm kidding you, Ryan. Look, I understand where they could take a wide receiver like Waddle. And you mentioned Riley Reif. Riley Reif can also play guard. So if in this scenario, you haven't taken Waddle, Jonah Williams would stay at left tackle, Riley Reif would play right tackle, and then you would draft the receiver. But if they do take the tackle, I think they'd slide Williams over to right tackle and play Riley Reif at guard. But there are a lot of possibilities, but they'd love to be able to get Chase and Waddle. Boy, could you imagine Joe Burrow throwing to those two?
That would be a lot of fun. We're just going to go with Jaylen Waddle at this point, though. But you never know. I mean, crazier things can happen. All right. 6th overall, that is the Eagles. However, ladies and gentlemen, we have a trade alert here. Ryan Wilson has the 49ers trading up from 12 to 6, giving the Eagles 12 and 43. And Pete Prisco will go with you on this one. Ryan has the 49ers selecting BYU quarterback Zach Wilson. What do you think, Pete?
This would be a great move for the 49ers. If they were able to pull this off and make this move up from 12 to 6 and just give up the 43rd pick, I think that would be a great move. I love Zach Wilson. I think he'd be great in that offense. I think Kyle Shanahan, with his ability to get outside, make plays on the move, he'd be fantastic. If this is staring them in the face and they have the opportunity to do this, even with Jimmy Garoppolo under contract, I would do this and do it in a hurry because I think he'd be perfect for what Kyle Shanahan wants to do.
Yeah, that's right. That's the exact reason they had it happening. Typically, I've had Zach Wilson going number 2 to the Jets. But Pete, you know, I talked about this before. We don't know what the Jets are going to do at number 2. So since there was a trade-down situation with the Jets, they weren't there. I had Zach Wilson slipping just a little bit to 6. And I feel like you do. Kyle Shanahan can make the most out of any quarterback. But if you give him a quarterback that's strong-armed, moves well in the pocket, makes a ton of good decisions, that feels like a perfect marriage for that San Francisco offense. I know Jimmy G is still there. I'm not convinced, and it feels like they're not either, the 49ers, that Jimmy G is the long-term solution. Yes, he got them to a Super Bowl, but he struggled with consistency. And that's typically the case with a lot of young quarterbacks. But I feel like Zach Wilson has such upside that only giving up a second-round pick to move up 6 spots, you almost have to do it if you're Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers.
Lions select 7th overall. Ryan Wilson has them taking Alabama wide receiver Devonta Smith. Alabama has their pro day going on right now today. He is not participating. However, guys, on Monday, he did reveal his weight. He says it is 170, of course, which is on the thinner side. We had him on during the Super Bowl. He said, look, I've been fighting this my entire life. Everybody says I'm too small. Ryan, what do you think about him going to the Lions?
Well, we talked about this a month ago or so, Amanda. He's not on the Ryan Wilson diet. Mac and cheese and ice cream, problem solved. 2 months from now, you weigh 190. So he's at 170. He says, as you point out, that's what I weigh. That I am who I am. He plays much bigger, much faster, much stronger than 170. NFL teams will still be concerned, some of them, about the durability issues, even though he didn't have any real durability issues at Alabama. He broke his finger in that game in the playoffs, but that had nothing to do with his weight. So if you're okay with his size and you love the way he plays as that Heisman Trophy winner, then he is going to be a top 10 pick. He is a special player. If he weighed 185, no one would care about this, but he looks so frail out there that it gives you pause. That said, if you're the Lions, you need help. Kenny Galladay's gone. Marvin Jones is gone. You have Jared Goff, who needs weapons outside of T.J. Hawkinson, and Devonta Smith is a layup. You could also go with Micah Parsons if you want to go linebacker here, or maybe even a cornerback. But the offense needs to get to work now that Matthew Stafford's gone, and Devonta Smith now with Jaylen Waddle and Jamar Chase off the board seems like the slam dunk layup pick here.
Guys, we had to 8, and this is part of the Jets trade with the Panthers. So the Jets traded out of their number 2 overall pick with the Panthers. So here they go at 8. Ryan has them taking, still landing a quarterback, and Alabama's Mac Jones. We've seen a lot of him today at his pro day. Pete Prisco, where do you go with this one? How do you like it?
I don't, not one bit. And again, Ryan must be getting some money from the agent to keep propping up Mac Jones. Mac Jones is a good player. I think he's going to go in the first round. But if you're sitting here and you got Mac Jones and you have Trey Lance, you take Trey Lance. Trey Lance is probably more of a project, and he has more upside. The safer pick would be Mac Jones, but the Jets can't get by with safe anymore. They need a guy who's going to change the dynamic of their franchise, and Trey Lance has a chance to be that. So in this scenario, if they trade down, I would sit there and I would take Trey Lance.
And I understand what Pete's saying. That's the issue when you look at Trey Lance and Mac Jones. Trey Lance's upside, his ceiling is through the roof. You can't even see the ceiling is so high. Mac Jones, you know what you got. It's pretty much what you see right now. He'll start to look a little older. He looks like he's 12 years old, but in terms of the athleticism and the arm strength and the mobility, it is what it is. He's incredibly smart, and he's well more advanced as a quarterback. More so than every other quarterback besides Trevor Lawrence. I think he's the most ready to play after Trevor Lawrence. And if that appeals to you, and perhaps that appeals, it's going to appeal to some teams that are more structured and have more around them than currently the Jets do. So to Pete's point, maybe Trey Lance does make some sense. But again, I'm a huge Mac Jones guy. He ran a 4.79 today. That's blazing when you look at Mac Jones walking down the street. You have no idea he could run that fast. So I think he's a good fit. I think he's a top 12 quarterback. A lot of people disagree, and that's okay. We'll find out in 2 or 3 years. But again, if you're the Jets, you trade down at 8, you get an extra pick, including a first rounder, and then you draft a quarterback, and then you can figure out what to do with Sam Darnold.
Pete, just really quickly following up on that, because every time we bring up Mac Jones, if he's in the top 10, you don't like it. Where would you like to see him go?
15 to New England. I think he'd be perfect there. I think that's a perfect spot for him. I've had guys in the league tell me they think he's a third-round talent, and I disagree with that, by the way, but they've said it. I don't buy it. But does he remind you of A.J. McCarron? Is he a better A.J. McCarron? I mean, that's the question you got to ask yourself. I think he's better than A.J. McCarron was coming out of Alabama, but not by much.
Pete, we're liking 15 to the New England Patriots. We will get to 15 here in a second and see what Ryan Wilson does there. All right, moving on, guys. We go to the Broncos at 9. Ryan Wilson has them selecting Virginia Tech cornerback Caleb Farley. A little bit thing about Caleb Farley, revealed he had a herniated lumbar disc undergoing minor surgery there. His agent says he should be good for training camp. Pete, will this affect his draft stock? And would you like him going to the Broncos?
No, I don't think he goes to the Broncos. I think when you look at what they did in free agency, they added 2 corners. I don't think they're going to draft a corner now. I don't think Farley's the #1 corner all along. I thought it was Patrick Surtain. And 2 things have come to light, since Brian probably did this. The back injury to Caleb Farley, and also Patrick Surtain being 6'2" and having a great workout. Now, the workout isn't why I love Patrick Surtain. I just think he's the best, most polished corner in this draft, and most of the guys I talk to agree with me. Farley, if he's healthy, has great upside. I think Surtain is going to be a Pro Bowler early in his career.
For fans watching, I will tell you Patrick Surtain not far away, so stick around to see where he goes. But let's move on to the Cowboys selecting 10th overall, and Ryan Wilson has Penei Sewell dropping down to 10, and he says the Cowboys cannot pass on this. Why not, Ryan?
Well, this is a situation where we have all these trades, mostly for quarterbacks. We have a little run on wide receivers, and Penei Sewell mysteriously gets pushed down, much to the chagrin of Bengals fans. This feels sort of like the CeeDee Lamb situation a year ago in real life, where the Cowboys had no interest in taking a wide receiver, but there CeeDee Lamb was sitting there, and they took him. They certainly have some needs at offensive line, and if Penei Sewell is there, I would imagine that's their guy. They need help on defense. They have done some things in free agency, but they need edge rush help to shore up the pass rush there. They could do that. This might be a little high for edge rush if they had a trade down situation, maybe. But if you get someone like Penei Sewell, you're going for it. You get Dak Prescott back. Dak Prescott was injured last year and lost for much of the season. He's back healthy. You want to keep him healthy. Why not get a cornerstone offensive tackle who, as we talked about earlier, could kick inside if you need him to? He did. He played right tackle in high school, played left tackle at Oregon. He sat out last year. But I think if he's there at 10, and I actually don't expect him to be, it's a CeeDee Lamb situation. You go get him if you're the Cowboys, and you're happy about it.
Hey, Cowboys fans were really happy when CeeDee Lamb landed there. The Cowboys went ahead and took him, the best player on the board, they believed at that point. All right, Ryan Wilson, Pete Prisco, you guys hang on just a second. We are far from finished here. We're going to go through the rest of Ryan Wilson's mock draft. And coming up next, let's talk about Patrick Surtain II. He is very high on Pete's board. Where does he land? We'll tell you next. Welcome back into CBS Sports HQ. We are going through Ryan Wilson's latest mock draft, and I got to tell you, it has some good, interesting trades. You see there, Justin Fields going to the Panthers at 2. They traded with the Jets there. We also get Kyle Pitts going to the Falcons, Jaylen Waddle to the Bengals, and then another trade, Zach Wilson going to the 49ers at 6. Let's welcome back in Ryan Wilson, Pete Prisco, our guy. Okay, I can speak. We're going to start with the Giants at 11. The Giants, they've, of course, made some moves in free agency. They landed Kenny Golladay yesterday, cornerback Adoree Jackson. Ryan, they're going with Micah Parsons here. Tell us why.
Yeah, you sort of touched on it there, Amanda. They did a lot of things offensively to get better. They got Kyle Rudolph, got Kenny Golladay, they got John Ross. That defense was actually pretty good in spurts last year. Patrick Graham, defensive coordinator, did a fantastic job. You talked about Adoree Jackson coming over, the cornerback. They re-upped Leonard Williams. So I have them taking Micah Parsons, the linebacker, who is probably a top 5 talent. There could be some off-field issues that see his draft stock slip a little bit. But if Dave Gettleman wants to get a middle-of-the-field playmaker, Micah Parsons is your guy right outside the first top 10 picks here. He didn't play in 2020. He didn't really need to in terms of what he put on tape. He is explosive. He's probably going to run on the 4.4s. He's this modern-day off-ball linebacker that we've seen the last 5, 6, 7 years that see them excel. Devin Whites, Devin Bushes of the world. Micah Parsons is that guy. He makes that defense that much better. And it sounds crazy to say that the Patriots probably had the best free agency so far, but I feel like the Giants are a close second, and they're making some real noise in the NFC East. And I say that knowing that Dak Prescott is 100%. So someone like Micah Parsons makes the Giants even better, makes things a little easier for Daniel Jones.
Let's go to the 12th overall pick, and because of a trade, we have the Eagles here trading out of 6 with the 49ers. All right, Pete, Ryan has them taking your guy, Patrick Surtain II. He's been working out at Alabama's Pro Day. What can you tell us, and how do you like this pick?
Yeah, this would be a great pick for the Eagles. I mean, they have a lot of needs, don't get me wrong, but I think cornerback to pair a guy with Slay would be really good for that defense. I love this kid. I think he's got superstar written all over him. He's polished. His dad was a great player. He's watched him play the position. He understands what it takes. But again, if you're sitting there and Trey Lance is on the board, you're telling me right now that the Eagles are 100% committed to Jalen Hurts if Trey Lance is on the board and they pass on him. So that would be an interesting scenario, but I do like Patrick Surtain to the Eagles.
That's the math, Pete, that you have to do, the QB situation. The thing is, though, Trey Lance with the North Dakota State. Are they going back-to-back North Dakota State franchise quarterbacks for Philadelphia? That's probably another talking point. But if you want a quarterback, and there's no reason the Eagles shouldn't want one, I think you just stay at 6. But I had them trading down because they're going to be out of the quarterback business for now. We've heard them talk about Jalen Hurts being their guy. We'll see how long that lasts. But I'm right there with you. Patrick Surtain is a special player. We've talked about it week in and week out. I like Caleb Farley a little better because of the athleticism, but Surtain is certainly a more finished product. 6'2", ran to the 4.4, so he's not no slouch either when it comes to athleticism. They have Darius Slade. They would have Surtain. They signed Anthony Harris to a one-year deal, so they have him. That secondary is suddenly a lot better than it was last year, and it's going to need to be because the NFC East is actually going to be, I feel like, pretty good, and you have to shore up that secondary to combat some of that.
Well, Pete mentioned Trey Lance was still out there. Trade alert at 13, not anymore. Ryan has the Bears trading up to get the Chargers pick at 13. In return, the Chargers get 20-52. And Ryan Wilson does, in fact, have the Bears taking Trey Lance. Ryan, we'll start with you. Pete, you can follow here. Ryan, was Andy Dalton not enough for you?
You mean Nick Foles 2.0? Why would that not be enough? I'm sorry Chris Hassel isn't here to see this. I wanted to brighten his day. We have so many Bears fans we work with that have been demoralized the last few weeks. Here's a little something to make you feel better. This is an idea for how Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace can save their jobs because Andy Dalton and Nick Foles ain't going to do it. If for some reason Trey Lance is sitting there at 13 and that's going to be a long shot, you better sprint to the podium and trade whatever it takes to get up there because you need a transcendent quarterback to change the direction of this franchise. And I think Trey Lance has a chance to do that. Pete and I have talked about it earlier today already. He's not going to do it right away. He's coming from an FCS program, but he has a ton of upside. He's going to be a special player. You just have to let him grow into the role. But the Bears cannot go into 2021 with Andy Dalton and Nick Foles.
Well, they will be, and I can't see them taking Trey Lance here because if you take Trey Lance, it's going to take some time to let him, become the quarterback, and this group doesn't have time. They've made their decision. They blew it. They have Andy Dalton. Look, Andy Dalton's better than what they've had. He's better than Nick Foles. He's better than Mitch Trubisky, but they can't save their jobs unless they go deep into the postseason, and I can't see that happening. So I don't think they'll take Trey Lance because it's too much of a project for them, and they don't have the time because they have to try and win this year.
All right, Pete not loving that. Again, let's move on to the Vikings at 14. Ryan has them selecting Northwestern offensive lineman Rashawn Slater. Pete, is this too high for him?
In my book, it is, particularly with Christian Darrisaw on the board, and I think Darrisaw is a better player. I think Slater might give you more versatility because I do think he's played left tackle. He's done some really good things there, even though he opted out last year. But he's also can move inside and play guard. He's got short arms. He looks more like a guard. He's also had some work at center, and we've seen the Vikings have problems inside. What would they do? Would they move last year's first-round pick Cleveland back to left tackle and play Slater at guard? Or would they keep Cleveland at left tackle? I mean, at right guard and play Slater at tackle. So I would go Darrisaw here if I were the Vikings, but I don't think he's going to be there when they pick anyways.
Let's go to the Patriots at 15, and this will be really interesting for pretty much everybody to see what they do here. Bill Belichick has something cooking in his brain. They collected all the free agents at this point. So, Ryan, you have them taking Elijah Vera-Tucker out of USC. Why him?
There was really no one. I mean, they filled every single need free agency except quarterback. All the quarterbacks off the board. I didn't have them trading up for one. But perhaps this is a sign, and not a very subtle sign, that, look, we're in the quarterback business. We're going to try to make this happen. Yes, we have Cam Newton coming back for 1 year, but Cam Newton struggled to throw the ball last year. We'll see if that was health-related or otherwise. But in the meantime, until we see them traded for a quarterback, I had them taking Elijah Vera-Tucker, who, like Rashawn Slater, his best attribute is his versatility. He played left tackle in 2020 for USC after Austin Jackson was drafted by the Dolphins, and he played really, really well. In my mind, actually played better than Austin Jackson on the outside, but he also started his career at left guard. So, again, there's the versatility there. The Patriots love versatility, especially along the offensive line. You have that there to protect Cam Newton or whoever the quarterback ends up being. So assuming they don't trade up for a quarterback, the next best thing, I guess, is to bolster the offensive line, and that's why I have them taking Elijah Vera-Tucker.
Cardinals at 16. Patrick Peterson officially gone now, a Viking, and Ryan Wilson has them getting a replacement for him in Jaycee Horn. Pete Prisco, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Oh, this one I like a lot. I really like Jaycee Horn. I think Jaycee Horn plays with the feistiness and toughness of his father, who everybody remembered when he was a wide receiver. He was a nasty player when he played, and I think Jaycee Horn has taken after him. He can play match man coverage. He's outstanding at it. He opted out last year, halfway through the season, but he's still a big-time player, and they need corners. Look, Patrick Peterson is gone. I think even if Patrick Peterson had come back on a one-year deal, they still need a young corner. So this would be a great pick for the Cardinals.
Get a thumbs up from Pete Prisco there. We like to see it. Let's go to the Raiders with the 17th overall pick. Ryan, they did sign Yannick Ngakoue, but you're doubling down on an edge rusher here with Georgia's Azeez Ojulari. Why?
Well, I mean, Ngakoue wasn't the final missing piece of the Super Bowl run for this defense, so they need a ton of help. They signed Solomon Thomas, too, who will play inside. But again, this defense was terrible last year, like just trash. So you need as many defensive players as you can get to bolster that defensive unit that struggled so mightily. Pete and I were talking about this earlier. Azeez Ojulari is right now, probably my slight favorite to go as the top edge rusher, but it's going to be tight. There are going to be a lot of guys packed together, primarily because there's no Chase Young, there's no Nick or Joey Bosa, and that's okay, but at least Azeez Ojulari, for me, does a lot of things really well. He ran 4.6, which is blazing. It doesn't really matter as an edge rusher. He's 250, 249. And he plays much bigger than that. And I think he comes in and helps, along with Yannick Ngakoue, along with Max Crosby. You hope Cleve Farrell can finally put it all together and then mount a pass rush, which you absolutely have to have when you're facing Patrick Mahomes twice a year.
At 18, we find the Dolphins yet again. This is another team that's made a lot of moves in free agency, adding 11 players. Ryan at 3 has them taking Jamar Chase. And right here at 18, Pete, this is your guy, Travis Etienne, going to the Dolphins, 18 overall. Thoughts?
Yeah, I love Travis Etienne. I think he's a home run threat. I think he's going to be like Alvin Kamara on the next level. The problem with it is I don't think the Dolphins are in a position to take him. I think they have so many other needs still. They need to get some more edge help. And we talked about, the edge group, and I think this is where they start to really fly off the board. Maybe Rousseau from Miami, or Carlos Basham from Wake Forest, or even Jalen Phillips from Miami. There's a lot of guys here, and I think they have more of a need at that spot than they do at running back. You can always get a running back in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. This is a deep running back class, so I don't like this one.
Okay, like Travis Etienne, don't like the pick. That is perfectly fine. Let's move on. Washington football team, 19th pick overall. They did sign Ryan Fitzpatrick to a 1-year deal, so they still need a long-term answer at quarterback. But as of right now, Ryan does not have them trading up. Instead, he has them selecting Virginia Tech's Christian Darrisaw. Pete, what do you grade this one?
This would be a great pick for Washington, and I think Washington's had a good offseason so far. This would be fantastic because the left tackle spot, they have a Charles they picked from LSU last year. He's questionable. He's coming off an injury. Christian was okay last year when he played. So if you can get a guy like Darrisaw to plug in at left tackle and protect your quarterback, whether it's Ryan Fitzpatrick this year or somebody else going forward, it makes a lot of sense. Washington does not have a ton of holes on their team, which is why I think they have a real shot to win the division again.
At 20, we find the Chargers. They traded out of 13 with the Bears. And Ryan Wilson, you have them taking Michigan defensive lineman Quitty Paye. Mainly, it seems, because he's still on the board here, and the Chargers decide to go with it.
Yeah, so Melvin Ingram is almost certainly not going to come back. They have Bosa on the other side. They need edge rush help. They traded down, got an extra 2nd-round pick, and still get an edge rusher, which was a big need for them. They could perhaps go offensive line here, but they did make some moves in free agency to address the offensive line. So I'm going with Quitty Paye. He's 6'4", 272. You see that there. He's raw, and I say this every time we talk about him, but he made a ton of strides over the summer, coming from 2019 season to an abbreviated 2020 season, and he did a lot of things that looks like a 1st-round talent. So I think there's opportunity for him to grow into that role. He doesn't have to be the guy. He will be opposite Joey Bosa. He can get his sacks in bunches. He even doesn't even have to start. Aldon Smith was a part-time rookie in San Francisco, and he had double-digit sacks, and that's a role you can use Quitty Paye in as he grows to a defense, that should be really good with Derwin James coming back from injury.
Brian and Pete, thank you guys so much. That is it for me. Chris Hassel's going to take over after this. So that was 1 through 20, but coming up here on CBS Sports HQ, we're going to take a look at 21 through 32. Where could we see the likes of Greg Rousseau go? We're going to find out next.
All right, continuing with our mock draft from Ryan Wilson, our very latest, about 5 weeks from the draft, and this is 11 through 20. Travis Etienne going to the Miami Dolphins at number 18 overall. There was a quarterback going in the teens as well, Trey Lance to the Chicago Bears at number 13 overall. So let's get into the 20s, shall we? We have Ryan Wilson. We also have Pete Prisco with us. Ryan, at number 21, the Indianapolis Colts taking Jalen Phillips, the defensive lineman.
They also need to figure out the offensive line position. We had Anthony Castonzo retire, but they did sign Sam Tevi, who played with the Chargers and started games last year. So they go edge rush here. They need some help on the outside. They have DeForest Buckner, who they traded for last year for that first-round pick, and that pick could not have gone any better. They re-signed Xavier Rhodes, who had sort of a resurgence last year in that one-year deal, so he's coming back for another year. That defense is pretty good. We know about the middle of the defense, but I think Jalen Phillips has a chance to be a special player. He wears number 15, which is the same number that Gregory Rousseau wore the year before he opted out. Phillips is a better player. He's a more complete player. He's better built in terms of needing to add weight, and he gets after it. The only issues are injury-related. He started his career at UCLA before retiring briefly and transferring to the U, where in 1 year he absolutely balled out.
And then right after that, at number 22, it's a division rival, the Tennessee Titans, taking Greg Newsome the second. Pete, what did you think about that? I mean, they cut a couple of the cornerbacks. Ryan says they could also use this pick on an edge rusher, but using it on Newsome, the defensive back.
Yeah, edge rusher is a definite possibility, but they now have major need at corner. I mean, they drafted Fulton last year, and he will be one of the starters. They have a couple other guys they really like, but I think this is a spot for Greg Newsome. This guy is one, when you talk to all the personnel guys and the scouts, kind of laying under the radar a little bit, but he will be a first-round pick. And think about this for a second. Northwestern will likely have 2 first-round picks this year. Think about that. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's the thing, Pete. A lot of people in the media haven't been talking about Greg Newsome, but NFL teams certainly know who he is. That's a testament to how good Pat Fitzgerald is at running that program. They're not getting a bunch of 5 stars. They get 3 stars, and he turns them into football players. Credit also goes, of course, to Greg Newsome and Rashawn Slater for what they're able to do. Newsome ran a 4.39 at his pro day the other day, but it's much more than that. You watch him play week in and week out. He played the first half. I think he left with an injury against Ohio State in that game that we talk about. Justin Fields not playing well in. Newsome shined in that game, and he shined in every game I watched him play, and that's why he's going to be a first-round pick. He can do anything you want a cornerback to do in today's NFL, and he's going to find himself going probably somewhere after 15.
Okay, so a Greg at 22, a Gregory at 23. Ryan Wilson has the Jets taking Gregory Rousseau out of Miami. Pete sat out last season, kind of hurt his draft stock a bit.
Yeah, it hurt him some because, remember, going into the draft process, he was considered maybe a top 7, 8 pick in the draft. And when we look at the edge rushers in this draft, had he come back and played really well, he might have been a top 10 pick. As it turns out, he opted out, which, you know, is a decision he made for his family, and you got to respect that. But I do think there's a lot of talent there. He's the one, when you look at him, if you looked at the Miami team and he was there with Phillips and Roche, and they walked off the bus, he'd be the one you'd go, wow. Now the question is, does that translate on the next level? I like him. I think this would be a great pick for them.
Okay, so Gregory Rousseau at number 23 for the Jets. This is after they traded down earlier in Ryan Wilson's mock draft to number 8 and took Mac Jones at quarterback. To the Steelers now at number 24. And Ryan, you have him taking Samuel Cosmi, the offensive lineman here out of Texas. Prospect ranked not in the top 50, but I know you think he's got a lot of upside because of his athletic ability.
Yeah, he's a really good player. He tested really well, which at the end of the day, sometimes it matters for offensive tackle, sometimes it doesn't. He ran a sub 4.5, incredibly strong on the bench press. His 3-cone was really good in terms of lateral mobility. All those things pop out to you. But I'll be honest, I was trying to figure out a way as a Steelers homer to have Greg Newsome fall to the Steelers. You talked about Steven Nelson just getting cut. They need help there now, but I think more importantly is offensive line help. Perhaps they go a running back here, but again, if you don't have the offensive line to help the running game work, it doesn't really matter. Villanueva isn't going to come back. back. Cosmi is an athletic guy that can come in right away. He can play either right or left tackle, though he did most of his damage at left tackle for Texas the last few years. I think he's going to be a first-round talent. If not, he'll go top of the second round. But again, when you're picking at 24 and you're in desperate need of offensive line help, Cosmi will be on your list of guys to target.
Now you got to get Big Ben a little bit more time to throw the ball. He was throwing it so quick last season, couldn't really get it down the field. Number 25, Pete, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ryan has him taking defensive lineman Christian Barmore.
Yeah, I normally would have agreed with this early in the process, but I can't see them going in this direction right now. I mean, they made a lot of moves on the defensive line in free agency. Roy Robertson Harris, they paid him a lot of money. Tyson Ojulari, they traded for Malcolm Brown. They like Hamilton coming back. We know they like their two edge rushers. So in leading up to free agency, it was easy to put in Barmore there because they needed help there. I think in this scenario, they'd have to look at a speed threat in the passing game, and either that's Kadarius Toney or Rondale Moore, because they need to get faster at wide receiver.
Okay, so they follow up the pick of Trevor Lawrence, number 1, with Christian Barmore at number 25. The Cleveland Browns at number 26. It's Zaven Collins who won the award for the best defensive player in college football last season. Ryan, is he going to be a linebacker or defensive end in the NFL, you think?
He's not a tweener because he weighs 260 and change. He's 6'4", but Pete's talked about this before. NFL teams aren't quite sure what to do with him. He played mostly inside. Maybe he played over the tight end a little bit at Tulsa. But that's the great thing about him, that versatility. And in Cleveland, that versatility is going to serve him well. They have Myles Garrett, obviously playing defensive end. He could probably rush off the edge sometimes on the opposite side. They signed John Johnson from the Rams, who's a fantastic safety. They have Grant Delpit coming back, their second-round pick last year, who didn't really play. So this defense is coming together. They need some help at the linebacker position. And I think that Zaven Collins, with that versatility, whether he's running around the edge, making tackles on quarterbacks, or running back pick sixes for game-winning touchdowns, which he did twice last year, I think he makes a lot of sense right here at the bottom of the first round, especially given what the Browns were able to do in free agency and addressing some of those other defensive needs.
Okay, we're going to finish up the first-round mock from Ryan Wilson on just the other side of this quick timeout here on CBS Sports HQ. Still some big names on the board. Rondale Moore of Purdue, Najee Harris of Alabama. Where does Ryan have him going here late in the first round? Finishing up Ryan Wilson's first round mock, had Jalen Phillips going to the Colts. A couple of Gregs there, 22-23, and Zaven Collins to the Cleveland Browns. Either going to be a linebacker or defensive end in the NFL. The Baltimore Ravens are up at number 27. We have Ryan Wilson and Pete Prisco here breaking down Ryan's very latest mock. Only 4 more to go, I believe. Pete has one coming next week. Ryan, it's Kadarius Toney, the wide receiver from Florida, going to Baltimore. We know Lamar Jackson needs some help.
Yeah, and Pete just talked about how explosive a player like Toney is. And look, you could go edge rush here because they lost 2 edge rushers in free agency. You could even go safety here. But I thought about it, and I like to give them a wide receiver that's a little bit bigger, someone like Terrace Marshall at LSU, but I don't think he's going to sneak into the first round. Kadarius Toney's only 5'11". He plays so much bigger than his size. And not only that, he's a threat short, intermediate, and deep. You can get him the ball on a swing pass. He can take it 80 yards to the house. Makes things easier for Lamar Jackson. So I think he's much more versatile than a legit deep threat. As I mentioned, someone like Marshall or even Boykins, who's currently on the roster and hasn't quite reached the potential that they want. So you pair Toney with Boykins, you pair Toney with Hollywood Brown, who is also still trying to reach that first-round potential. And then I think you're on to something as Lamar Jackson continues to grow into a passer. Had a little setback last year, for being honest, but I think he has a chance, Lamar Jackson, still be a really good thrower of the football, and Toney will go a long way with helping that.
All right, so that's 27 for the Ravens. Up at number 28 is the New Orleans Saints, and they released Janoris Jenkins last week. So, Ryan, you have him going right back for a cornerback here, Asante Samuel, and you think he plays a lot bigger than his size at 5'10".
Yeah, it's funny. BMAC, our guy, compared Asante Samuel to Jair Alexander because they're about the same size, 5'10", maybe 5'11". Janoris Jenkins is undersized, but Asante Samuel is undersized but doesn't know it. He plays with an edge. He's extremely physical. He breaks on the ball. He makes plays at the catch point. I love his game. And Asante Samuel actually compared his game to Jair Alexander. So there's some comparison there, and I think that's exactly what you're looking for if you're the Saints after parting ways with Janoris Jenkins. You want to get more physical there. and you already have a really good secondary. Add one more piece to it, Asante Samuel, and that'll help with that offense that's now going to be without Drew Brees.
Okay, moving on to the Packers at number 29. And this almost seems too good to be true if you're a Packers fan. If you're Aaron Rodgers in particular, Pete, he hasn't taken Rondale Moore. I'd love to see Aaron Rodgers have somebody like that to throw the ball to.
Oh my gosh! Could you imagine if they added that toy to the offense? Rondale Moore is only 5'7". He measured that today, but he's got a 42.5 vertical jump. He can bench press 225 pounds 24 times. He is a physical freak, and there are concerns. He's one of my favorite players in this draft. I think he's Tyreek Hill 2.0. Not as big as Tyreek Hill, but every bit as fast as Tyreek Hill. I don't know if he plays as fast as Tyreek Hill, but his time is just the same as what Tyreek Hill had coming out of college. So I love this for the Packers. This would be fantastic. Give them another dimension in that offense. The one thing there is concern, and you talk to a lot of teams about them, how can you justify taking a 5'7" wide receiver who hasn't played a lot of football because of injuries and opt-outs in the first round? Well, you know what? Look at Tyreek Hill. That's the player you're going to be getting in Rondale Moore.
Okay, so let's move on to number 30 now. Just a few more picks here in the first round of Ryan Wilson's latest mock. Pete, do you agree with the selection? He has the Bills at number 30 taking Tyson Campbell, the cornerback.
I could see them taking corner. I just don't think Tyson Campbell's the corner I would take. In fact, I think his teammate, Eric Stokes, is a better player. He's got more upside. He's faster. He's more athletic. Look, Campbell's a long, athletic corner. I get it. I just think Stokes, and a lot of the guys I talk to in the league think the same. Stokes would be a better pick in this spot. But I do like Campbell. I like both players. I just think Stokes is a little bit better.
All right, the Chiefs are up next. And they've had a lot of turnover on the offensive line. They signed a couple of guys, but guards. Ryan has him going right back to that offensive line here. Ryan, you got him taking Teven Jenkins out of Oklahoma State.
Yeah, you touched on it, Chris. They cut Mitchell Schwartz. They cut Eric Fisher, their starting tackles last year. Yes, they signed Joe Thuney to a big deal, and that's a huge get. Yes, they got Kyle Long out of retirement, and that's also huge. But they need help to protect Patrick Mahomes. That's priority number one. And Teven Jenkins plays with an edge. Don't be fooled by those glasses. I'm soft. I got glasses on. Teven Jenkins is not soft. He plays angry. He can play right tackle. He can play left tackle in a pinch. And I think he comes in right away and starts. He might have slipped this far, but if he's there, that is an easy layup for Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs offense, something Patrick Mahomes would certainly embrace. Now, we just talked about Rondale Moore. If Rondale Moore happens to slip, I wonder if the Chiefs would think about taking Rondale Moore, because that would be exciting as well. But offensive line help should be priority number one.
That's too much. My head would explode if they had Tyreek Hill and Rondale Moore. They definitely needed more offensive line help in that Super Bowl. The Bucs were all over them. This last pick in the draft, Pete, Ryan's squeezing another running back in here. Second running back in the first round. Najee Harris to the world champs. Pete?
Yeah, I could see them taking running back here if it was Travis Etienne, but since Ryan has him gone, I don't think Najee Harris is much different than what they have in Ronald Jones. I think they could wait in this scenario, maybe go defensive tackle. Remember, we still don't know what some of those guys up front are going to do, not Ndamukong Suh being one of them. But if they do take a running back, I think they can wait later and get him, whether it's maybe Demetric Felton, who I really love coming out of UCLA. I know he plays wide receiver, but he's also played running back. That's the type of weapon they need in that offense. So I would pass on Najee Harris here if I were the Bucs.
Yeah, I love Najee Harris. And Pete is right. There are some similarities to what they currently have on the roster. He's better than Playoff Lenny, and Playoff Lenny's still a free agent, so we don't know what's going to happen there. But Pete talked about, what he calls airbacks. Michael Carter's another one who is Javonte Williams' teammate at UNC. He could be an option maybe in round 2 or round 3 should he be there. But I think they need something beyond Ronald Jones and Keyshawn Vaughn. Keyshawn Vaughn had an up-and-down rookie season. He'll probably get better. But Najee Harris, to me, is a special player. I like him a little better than Travis Etienne. But if he falls out of the first round, I could certainly see it just because we have this conversation every year. Running backs aren't quite as valued as much as they used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Okay, Pete, you're doing your next mock next week, correct?
Correct.
Does that mean, Ryan, you don't have to do one next week?
No. The bosses have me do one every week no matter what, Chris. That's how it goes.
No matter what, man. All right, looking forward to both of those next week. Ryan Wilson and Pete Prisco with us here, recapping the back end of Ryan Wilson's latest first-round mock draft, which includes some trays, not many, but some. Asante Samuel Jr., number 27 to the Saints. Rondale Moore to the Green Bay Packers. That would be really intriguing at 29, and Najee Harris rounding things out. The great running back going to the world champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You can hear more from Ryan, Pete, and all of our NFL experts on Will Brinson's Pick 6 podcast. Download and subscribe today.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.